Hi, my name is Rick Howell. I'm a TV guy, and this show is called Talk Back to Television. It's about the business of television, how we make the programs, how we distribute the programs, and mostly how we pay for the programs. Because if we can't pay for the shows, there's nothing to watch. Stay tuned. Hi, this is Talk Back to Television. I'm here with my sponsor, John Giegengack from Hub Entertainment Research. John, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing fine. And by the way, I just can't resist this. We were going to do the conversation with me as his character, and this is television. This is serious stuff. You're not allowed to kid around, right?
I don't know. We should try that sometime.
We should try that.
You have to let me know in advance because it makes it hard to concentrate.
Maybe I can help you figure out one, and we can do one in Abbott.
Now you're talking.
All right. We're starting this conversation the way we did last week when I invited John to talk about this. It occurred to me that we have a lot of television viewers who probably would agree with what I'm going to misquote as a Charlton Heston quote, and I will warn you that I am not a Second Amendment type at all. But the misquote is, "You can have my TV remote when you can remove it from my cold, dead fingers." Now, we've got, what do we have, 37 million, 38 million pay TV subscribers out there, maybe more than that. And they all use a variation of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
A million buttons, but they know they can channel surf. And we know that channel surfing happens to be something that you simply cannot do across streaming platforms. So do we have a lot of people who simply will refuse to give up the TV remote?
I don't know if they'll refuse, but in our research, we find there are a lot of people who inertia is a really powerful factor in keeping people from changing their habits. And that's not just with regards to TV. I mean, even if you look at something like the QWERTY keyboard, which was created back to keep the metal arms in your mechanical typewriter from bumping into each other and getting stuck. We are all still using that, primarily because it's too much trouble to change it, even if the status quo has its imperfections. And we find a lot of people who, when we ask them, if they still have cable, why haven't you cut it? One of the biggest reasons that we hear is that it's familiar. So I don't have to think about how to make it work. And maybe it doesn't do everything perfectly. And maybe you wouldn't design TV this way if you were going to invent it today and start from scratch. But it's the devil I know. I'm familiar with how to use it. I know how to make it do the things I want to do. And that's a big reason that people don't change, even if they suspect there might be some better solution. The task of trying to put together some kind of a package that has all the stuff that they get from cable today, it just seems like more effort than they want to put in. And that's mostly older people, but there are a lot of those people out there.
Speaking of older people, I had a conversation with a client this morning, and a youngish 20s type was on the call, and I said, "So do you have cable TV?" She said, "No." I said, "Do your parents have cable TV?" She said, "I live with my parents and they don't." I said, "How did you convince them to drop cable TV?" She said, "I trained them to use YouTube TV." And
Yep.
I asked her to please not spend any time with my son because she would train him to do that anyway. So it is a generational thing, right?
I mean, it is somewhat, but that you raise a really important point, I think, which is that the division between something that's cable or broadcast or streaming is starting to get pretty vague. So if you look at the virtual MVPDs, the experience on there and the experience on some of the FAST, for instance, looks really similar to your traditional program guide. And your average consumer, once they get in and they start using it, they don't necessarily know or care what mode of transmission that used to get into their house. The vMVPDs, still don't have a perfect representation of things like like local channels, which is one of the things that people, especially older people, think are really important. That's another big anchor that holds people to cable. But I think that what people are comfortable with is that interface and sort of the program guide and the way that that's set up. They don't have any particular allegiance to something being cable or streaming. And in fact, a lot of people, I've done ethnographies in people's homes, and they've been operating, a streaming channel from their smart TV and thought they were on cable, or just, if you actually ask them, where is this transmission coming from, they have no idea and they don't care. But it's that experience, it's that friction required to learn some new mode of manipulating your content that some people are just not that interested in putting in the effort.
Well, and I have DirecTV over here, and I even prefer to use the old big DirecTV remote control. I can go from Showtime to HBO with one click, literally one click, right?
Because it has a Showtime button, or
no, because
just the input.
The way the channels are aligned, I can just go channel up from Showtime to HBO. Okay, there is no way in this world to do that within the streaming ecosystem. I have to exit my Showtime, go back to some other menu, fire up Max, for God's sakes, and then find what I'm wanting in Max. Now, to the extent that I might be looking for a specific show, that might make more sense. But if I just want to watch what's on, actually, what's on might be the defining phrase here. Because in a linear world, what's on is what's on this moment, this time, those channels. How wedded? I mean, we are dealing with a percent of the population, but it's a very profitable percent of the population. What percent do you think of our people they just want to know what's on?
Well, you raise a great point. We've actually been doing a lot of research on this, and the first thing that we learned is that people don't just sort of exist in one state. So there's a whole continuum between, I know exactly what I want to watch, and I'm going to sit down and watch that, all the way over to, I have no idea, but I just want to channel around and see what's on and have that sort of low impact lean back viewing. And that's something that people are getting used to. So everybody sort of falls onto that continuum, and they fall at different points onto there all the time.
At different times of the day, depending on, okay, so here's classic example. My wife and myself sitting on the couch, we will just click up and say what's on, unless we say we need to watch the new episode of Ahsoka on Disney Plus. In which case I'll click out, click around, move back, move over, and find Ahsoka, which now takes me 15 seconds. When I started with all this, it would have taken me 5 minutes. And to the extent that you said this is kind of learned behavior, as long as we're rewarding the time that you're learning, once you sort of get into it, it's easy. But inertia takes over, and just a whole lot of people will say, I like the remote. I like being able to move up and down. I like to channel surf, for God's sakes. Remember that?
Yeah, well, I mean, and we find that everybody likes to channel surf at least some of the time, and that's sort of a viewing model that like the Netflixes of the world have almost completely overlooked. So that's one of the things that we find that people like about fast channels, besides the fact that they're free, is that most of them have that linear half where you can channel around and see what's on.
I can channel surf on Pluto.
And you can channel surf on Pluto. But the really cool thing about Pluto is that the channels are not all organized around networks. There are some that are networks, but then there's some that are sort of genres of content, like 90s action movies or music documentaries, and that intuitively, that organizing the content in that way makes a lot more sense to people than purely the network brands, which as more and more people are streaming, the individual network brands, many of them sort of start to lose their meaning. because people are used to just thinking about the platform they're on or the show that they're watching. But even the older people that are used to that sort of programming grid, we find that they really respond to the sort of browsing, lean back, just show me something good that's on.
Yeah.
That I didn't have to think. I didn't have to think too hard. I mean, it's funny
Right.
that this counts as a hassle, but people don't want to think so hard about what's the next show they're going to watch out of all the limitless number of shows on the internet. That sort of qualifies as a speed bump in the discovery process today. It's a nice problem to have, but it's still one that people bring up.
I get that. All right. Well, guess what? We have a lot more conversation to have about this one. We're about out of time on this one, but you know what? I want to try to dig into the Pluto model and Tubi, Fubi, Flubi, and Booby. Everybody who's got 4 letters that end with a vowel has a streaming service. Sorry, guys.
Yep.
But the way those are all organized, you could argue that if Pluto had a lot more content that I'd like to watch, the Pluto viewing experience would be significantly more valuable to me. It's interesting.
It might be. I mean, they've kind of designed it by. I think they've done sort of a smart thing, and there is no, or that I can think of. I don't think there's any original content on Pluto right now. But what they are doing is they're taking that huge Paramount catalog and
That
reorganizing it
library.
in ways that makes more sense to people. So there's people that people no longer make such a huge distinction between a brand new show and a show that's new to me, even if it's a little bit older. If I haven't seen it before and I've heard good things about it, it's just as valuable as a brand new show.
There you go. And if I want to watch Martin Landau and Barbara Bain on Mission Impossible, I know I can do that on Pluto.
You can.
and there you go. All right, John Gignac, thank you for your time, but we have a lot more conversations we have to have on this.
That sounds good.
Say to everyone, we'll see you all next week on Talk Back to Television. Bye-bye. There we go.